The Ringer's Austin Gayle joins, as he does every Thursday. We're ranking the most down bad fan bases in the entire NFL. Let's get it.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily rankings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special thank you to all of the everydayers out there for making Renner Ranks your first listen. Do not forget, subscribe, follow. It's free on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Helps us a lot. I am, of course, Mike Renner, NFL Draft Analyst at The Messenger, at Mike Renner _ on social media. And today's Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. As I said off the top, the most down bad fan bases. The teams that you would least want to be a fan of right now in the NFL. I don't like to skew negative, but when Austin Gayle's on, we like to he's a man of the people, and it's just more fun when he gets to complain. It truly is. So let's get him in and let's rank our top 3 most down bad fan bases. All right. I texted you earlier today, said we're ranking the worst teams to be a fan of. I don't know like an eloquent way to say it, but it's just like who you'd least want to be a fan of right now. Who's like the farthest away from being a team that you'd be excited about. So I'll give it to you. Kick us off with your number 3 team that you would least want to be a fan of at the moment.
So this one, I went a little crazy here. Because I was factoring in recent success in addition to future outcomes, and then also like expectations. And number 3 is the Dallas Cowboys. Bear with me. They get the most media coverage out of any team in the league. And their expectations every single year are to win the Super Bowl. Every single year is to win the NFC, go to the NFC Championship, hell, win the Super Bowl. And every single year they don't. I feel like that fandom, yes, you're winning more games in the regular season, but that snip, snap of never actually getting there and every single year feeling like a disappointment because the expectations have been Super Bowl or bust for what feels like 5+ years now, maybe more than that, as America's team. With no end in sight, right? There's no like real end in sight. I don't think Mike McCarthy is the long-term answer at head coach. You still have Jerry Jones pulling the strings. Maybe even like the biggest Dak Prescott fans in Dallas right now, do they feel like he can win a Super Bowl with the current roster that's constructed with Mike McCarthy calling the plays? I don't know. I feel like the Dallas Cowboys, yes, they win games in the regular season. Yes, they're more fun to root for than teams that have like 1 win this year or 0 wins this year. But at least those teams, expectations were low for the Carolina Panthers. Expectations were low for the Arizona Cardinals. They were high and have always been high for the Dallas Cowboys, making fandom that much harder. That's coming from someone who's a Las Vegas Raiders fan, who's been an Oakland Raiders fan his entire life, knowing that every single year you're not going to make it. And the most disappointing year, the saddest year I had as a Raiders fan, was the 2016 season where we made the playoffs and Derek Carr broke his leg. That was the saddest season. As many games as we won, as fun as that season was, that was the saddest season we had because it's like, man, we didn't make it, we could have. I feel like Dallas has that every year. Every year they get so close, and they just never make it.
That one is a wild one. I had 6 teams written down for 3 spots. They were not one of them. Like Fair. When you're winning, though, even if you know, hey, we probably aren't going to win it all, you still have that glimmer of hope, right? Like until it actually gets dashed come playoff time. And then, unfortunately, with you, like it got dashed before playoff time. That's why that probably sucked because then you had to survive through like 3 more games of that season where it was just like knowing what was going to happen, right? And being so close and like having that. So this is like a little different where you're just like, oh, like if we get a few breaks, a few bounces, we could win it all. So I don't think that's that. But I did take into account what you said about like previous success. That's why I didn't put the Patriots on there because as bad as they are right now, as far away as they look from competing,
I'd kill to be a Patriots fan right now.
It's like, dude, you can sit back and just look at the rings.
Yes.
And think about the good times. You can go flip on YouTube highlights, at 3 a.m. and be like, yeah, we had it. We had a run. So they don't make this list. Who does make this list, though, for me at number 3? Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers right now, as much as I love Bryce Young and think he'll turn it around, he's having a Trevor Lawrence-esque rookie year, right? Where it's just like nothing good. He has the same stat line every week. It's a bad stat line. And like, there's no change. Just like every week looks the same and it's not good. I thought maybe he had turned a corner, but this past week was maybe his worst game of the year with those 2 pick sixes were just terrible decisions. Don't have their first round pick this next year. So even as bad as you can be this next year, if you end up with the number 1 overall pick that you trade away and it's Caleb Williams or Drake May and they turn out to be dudes, you're thinking about that the rest of your life, right? And if Bryce Young doesn't turn out to be a dude, you're thinking about that the rest of your life. You have a meddling owner with a GM with one of the worst draft track records that I've seen of a GM in the league right now. I just want to read you his rounds 1 through 3 picks. 2021. So we got Scott Fitterer, 2021. JC Horn, pick 8. And he's good, no doubt. But you go and look at the guys drafted after him: Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Slater. You'd rather have any of those 4 guys right now than JC Horn. Terrace Marshall Jr., second rounder. The separation metric, who tweeted it out today? The PFF separation metric. He's dead last in the PFF separation metric right now.
My God.
Brady Christensen, third rounder. Tommy Tremble, tight end, third rounder. 2022, Ike Ekwonu looks horrible this year. Number 6 overall. Third rounder, Matt Corral. Already gone. This past year, Bryce Young, Jonathan Mingo, only 200 yards on the season. Does not look good by any means. Was a senior coming out too, which is concerning.
I never got the Mingo hype.
Dude, I didn't either. He was like 50 spots lower. I think, I had him in the 90s, maybe like past 100. He was just not like explosive. I know he ran, like he's one of those guys who tested better than I thought he looked on tape. Like who was the Baylor? Who was the Baylor wide receiver who tested out the charts? And I'm like,
Denzel Mims.
Like that. Denzel Mims. Very Denzel Mims-esque testing from him. And then DJ Johnson, which was one of the worst picks at the time, the outside linebacker who doesn't even like see the field for them. So not good. Not good by any means there to be a Panthers fan. Unless Bryce Young saves them, it won't be good anytime soon.
The Carolina Panthers are my number 1. Like I think the Carolina Panthers are the worst team to be a fan of right now. They have a rookie quarterback that there's a lot of reasons to think that this isn't going to work out. Could it? Sure. A lot of people were high on him. I know you were high on him. I had him behind CJ Stroud, behind Anthony Richardson going into this class. But still, could he turn it around? Sure. We've seen rookie quarterbacks have bad first years and then turn it around down the road. However, the problem is they don't even have their pick this year. Like, they're playing as poorly as they are because they traded up to go get Bryce Young, who is not looking as good as CJ Stroud, who I think in the sample size we saw with Anthony Richardson wasn't looking as good as Anthony Richardson. Then with now, if you wanted to move on quickly and go full Rosen with it, right? Draft Rosen and then go Kyler Murray, they can't. And even if they didn't, they're like, we're committing to Bryce Young. They can't even do what the Bears did last year or trade out that number 1 overall pick to continue to commit to Bryce Young with more resources. Like, that trade up to number 1 overall not working out, which all signs point to, no sign points to it is working out right now, is going to hamstring this franchise for at least the next few years. And at that point, you could be getting a new head coach, an entirely new coaching staff. You could be getting a new GM, and this thing's restarting in 2025. And that, to me, is like, when you're a fan of a team that it looks like you just tried to restart and it didn't work, those are always the hardest years to be a fan. Like, reminds me with the Raiders, right? When the Raiders drafted Jamarcus Russell and you're like, wait, this isn't working out and we're not going to be involved in like like this Raiders team isn't going to be good until we find a way out of this, what was like a very rough contract too, because he got like $60 million guaranteed before the rookie wage scale. I was like, we're screwed. I'm rooting for a team that can't even restart for like 3 years. That was rough. And I think the Carolina Panthers are in a similar spot. And most times when you see a miss at the quarterback position that is leading to this many losses in their first season, right? They could easily have the number 1 overall pick this year. They're right now on Tankathon, the number 2 overall team if they had their pick. And we're recording this Thursday in the afternoon. They play the Chicago Bears tonight. They lose tonight. Like, there's that head-to-head with Chicago. Like, I don't know. It could be a situation where they just traded the number 1 overall pick to get last year's number 1 overall pick, which essentially would be saying we traded Caleb Williams for Bryce Young, which sucks. Like, you're going to live with that forever. Add in the fact that CJ Stroud's good. Add in the fact that maybe Anthony Richardson pans out, and this looks even worse. GM's gone. All these coaches that they invested a ton of money in are gone. Like, this team could be in a dire straight situation. I know you said it's your number 3. It's my number 1. If I'm a Panthers right now, I'm freaking scared. I'm like, dude, I want Bryce Young to be good. Why didn't we trade Brian Burns? No, we shouldn't trade Brian Burns. And you're in this weird limbo of disaster that it's just tough right now. I would hate to keep pounding for Panthers fans right now.
We'll get back to AG in just a second. But first, today's podcast is brought to you by DoorDash. Whenever the game clock stops, That's when it's time to order in with DoorDash. Order pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Score football season's best deals on groceries, restaurants, retail, and more. I'm partial to a few places that I DoorDash near me. Here in Nashville, One Otaku Ramen right down the street. Go to Sunday morning if I've been drinking, watching college football on a Saturday. Always fantastic. Or Two Hands, also right down the street. Both very good. That's more brunch food. Otaku Ramen. Depends on what mood I'm in at the time. Get up to 50% off, though. $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code LOCKED23. That's 50% off, up to $10 value when you on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. As much as I love Bryce Young, and I do still think he'll be good, what they gave up was still insane to me, to give up their first rounder, next year's first rounder, but then also DJ Moore. You can't give up the guy that, you need the young quarterback to succeed, right? That was giving up the player never made sense to me. That was I believe in Bryce Young long-term. I think they'll figure it out. But again, it looks like they're probably at minimum, it's like year 4 before this roster couldn't even be good enough to compete with Bryce Young. And so it's you really mortgage so many years now just to get that guy. It was just a miscalculation of how good your roster was to think that one rookie quarterback could elevate this receiving core, how it's put together.
Betting that big on an outlier in a situation where, if you just sat down for a second and said, okay, we do this, and Bryce Young's our starter next year, that's the quarterback we love, we do this. How many wins do you think we get next year? What's the range of outcomes? You'd be like, with a rookie quarterback and him adjusting to the league, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. And then you're like, okay, so you're saying we're going to send the 9th overall pick this year, DJ Moore, and potentially a top 5 pick next year for this kid. Are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure? And I think anyone when framed that way would be like, I don't know. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if it makes sense. That was the toughest part of the trade up for me. Was dude, did anyone in the building think what number pick they'd be giving up the following year? This could be the number 1 overall pick that they're trading. They essentially trade the 9th and the 1st overall pick and DJ Moore for Bryce Young, which could have netted them. Maybe, yes, they don't get a quarterback last year, but you end up having DJ Moore, that 9th overall pick, and then you end up being in position to draft Caleb Williams after starting whoever they start this year, Andy Dalton or whoever. Maybe Andy Dalton gets some more wins. I don't know. It's a tough situation in Carolina right now. I'd be nervous.
All right, who's your number 2?
My number 2 is the Chicago Bears. I still feel like the Chicago Bears, with the coaching situation, has been rough, right? I don't think anyone in Chicago feels super confident they found the coach of the future. And I think something that we've learned this season and we've talked about on this podcast, teams that have identified or found that edge at head coach are those ones that you're betting on getting to the postseason and consistently competing in the postseason. Mike Tomlin goes without saying what Dan Campbell has done over 3 years. He might win coach of the year. If not, definitely win coach of the year, win the Detroit Lions, win the NFC North, and go to the playoffs. I think the Dolphins have found their head coach in Mike McDaniel. I think on the opposite end, Chargers fans probably want Brandon Staley gone after this season. And they're a team with a really good quarterback, and there's a lot of reasons for optimism, but maybe feel hamstrung or ceilinged by their head coach. So in Chicago, not a lot of signs pointing to that Matt Eberflus is the guy of the future. They also lost their defensive coordinator this season for unknown reasons. They had to fire, I think, their running backs coach or whoever it was. They're in a bad spot from a coaching perspective. From a GM perspective, Ryan Poles win. It was a win in the Carolina Panthers trade. Trading back and getting DJ Moore, I love what they did. I think that was the right decision. Now they're in position to have 2 of the top 3 picks. Awesome. Phenomenal. Trading away Roquan Smith, trading for Chase Claypool, and trading for Montez Sweat and giving him that contract, I don't understand. I think there's inconsistent decision-making for him outside of the slam dunk when he got that offer on his desk, easiest money in the world.
Yeah.
Ryan Poles hasn't made a lot of really, really good decisions. I don't like the money they spent at off-ball linebacker in free agency. I don't love the trade and then the contract they gave Montez Sweat. As good of a player as he is, I don't like that value. That worries me about the GM. So now you have 2 of the stable pieces that you need to be good, to be a consistently competing franchise, coach and GM with concerns. Then you get to quarterback. This week, they're starting Tyson Bagent. Justin Fields has been banged up all year, and even when he's been healthy, it's been up and down, inconsistent. The good news is you are potentially going to have the number 2, number 3 overall pick, the number 1, number 3 overall pick, and there's an opportunity to reset here. The scary thing is, even with Caleb Williams, are the other foundational pieces, the GM, the coach, in place to maximize whoever they take at the top of the draft, whether that's Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Marvin Harrison, or whoever they end up taking. Maybe it shouldn't be 2, maybe it should be 3. Dallas Cowboys maybe higher. I don't know. I just feel like Chicago, as good as the draft capital is in 2024, I don't believe in the cornerstones that are in the building right now.
See, I didn't even have them in my top 6 just because, I mean, look at what happened with the Texans this year. When you have that much draft capital, which what they do, which is could be number 1 and number 2, could be, number 1, number 3, is more likely than not going to be one of the top 2 picks, and then another one in the top 5. That can turn around your franchise real quick, and at least gives you something as a fan. So we're talking about like from the fans' perspective to hang your hopes on. Something that's like, oh, that happens, we're money. So I think that is why I didn't quite include them, but I do agree. Like, this season could not have gone worse if you're a Bears fan. Truly,
no, it's gone terrible.
The only silver lining is how bad the Panthers
are. How much better would it have been is that the Panthers suck. They're going to give you the number 1 or number 2, number 3 overall pick, but Justin Fields has been healthy and good, and that bet you've essentially made on Justin Fields is working out. It's not, right? Like, the bet on Justin Fields has not worked out due to health and obviously the inconsistency to start the season. Maybe he rights the ship when he's back healthy over the back half of the season. Who knows? But this is not the situation I think the Bears envisioned when they made this. And then you continue. I think the Montez Sweat thing is another reason to be like, what's the plan here, right? What's the what is the knowledge that Ryan Poles has that no one else has in terms of making these decisions via trade that he thinks is maximizing the free agency or the cap room that they have and the draft capital that they have.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. There's no signal from Ryan Poles from a talent acquisition standpoint besides the DJ Moore trade. That was every other move he's made.
Which was gifted to them, though. I really want to know what those phone calls were. I want to know what those phone calls were, right? Was that hey, this is what we want to give up, and then they really push for a player? I don't know. I want to know exactly, maybe look more into the reporting on that trade, because I feel like that is the
They did say they wanted a receiver. So they started negotiations off saying they wanted a receiver, an NFL receiver with trade. So
Panthers are bad, dude. That trade up for the Panthers, I think at the time I might have tweeted that it makes sense for both sides, but I don't know. I think that betting on Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick, it had to hit for it to work, and it's obviously so quickly not hitting. And I would have probably picked Anthony Richardson at number 1 overall, and maybe I look like a fool there too.
No, it's too early to say any of these guys besides obviously Stroud being an absolute dude. We'll get back to the pod here in just a second, but first, today's episode is brought to you by the Jace Case. Jace Case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can now customize your case and add additional life-saving medication based on your unique needs. Jace Case is continually working to expand their medication offerings. In those recent efforts, they added ivermectin as an option to the Jace Case. All it takes to get a Jace Case is fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from our physicians or any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Go to jacemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. All right, number 2 for me. I had the New York Giants. Now, maybe talking through it, I might flip them with the Panthers a little bit, but you're the rest of this season, you're watching Tommy DeVito play football. Now, he's not the most unexciting quarterback to watch play football, but it's not good. I guess Tyrod could come back later this season, but even with that, you're not slated for a top 3 pick right now. So you're not in control technically of your, I guess you kind of are in control of your destiny because they do play the Patriots later on. So if you want to tank really hard, you can lose that game and get into the top 3, but it's you need to get into the top 2, right? To get one of the guys in this class that really is going to make you feel good about drafting, with Daniel Jones still on the hook for $47 million against the cap next year, right? So next year's screwed. Next year's off the table entirely already with the New York Giants. And that's why with the Panthers, if Bryce Young hits next year, all of a sudden things look a lot different for that franchise. But with Daniel Jones, there's just there's no him hitting next year, right? Coming back from a torn ACL, there's no all of a sudden DJ figures it out. And they're in the same boat as the Panthers where they don't have a wide receiver worth a darn on that roster right now. Like they do not have talent for him to throw to. Our best talent's, an aging tight end. So there's that. $22 million to cut him in 2025. So that year is going to be kind of a wash. And then there's the fact that you're in a division with two houses with the Eagles and Cowboys who don't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon, that you have to get over those two to even like compete or start competing in the NFC. And then after that, this roster, you have Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence. After that, you need pretty much everything else. Now you hope Deonte Banks, you hope Kayvon Thibodeau develop into dudes. But after that is all you have really to hang your hopes on right now. I think Evan Neal, we've seen enough to know that he's not going to be an NFL tackle. He could be a guard, but that's still, a top 10 pick on a guard. Still not a great use of draft capital. This is a team that they just feel far away. And so maybe they have a little more hope because they have a better roster, but they just feel very far away, especially if they don't get one of those top 2 picks this upcoming year or top 3. I mean, if they get Marvin Harrison Jr., things will change with the Giants. That's a guy that you need. But after that, they just feel really far.
The Giants were a team who were on my list, but I did not put my top 3 because I do think there is a little bit of a counter argument to them not being in a really good position to get Caleb Williams. And here it is. The Arizona Cardinals are starting Kyler Murray this week. And I think if he stays healthy, he's playing the rest of the season. If Kyler Murray, I think they're playing Taylor Heineke and the Atlanta Falcons this week. If they even just get that win, and you see what that offense looks like and how different that offense is without Josh Dobbs and Clayton Tune, for God's sakes. I think the Arizona Cardinals potentially win. And James Conner's back and elevated from IR. The Arizona Cardinals could win 2 or 3 more games this year. Then I look at the Carolina Panthers. I don't think it's crazy to say Bryce Young even beats Tyson Bagent and the Bears tonight as a 3-point underdog. I think the Carolina Panthers have wins on their schedule potentially, right? I don't know. That's the team right now that I feel like is best positioned to get the number 1 overpick because they just have a ton of talent. The Chicago Bears, I think, the other side of that, right? If the Chicago Bears beat the Carolina Panthers, they have 3 wins, which is already more wins than the New England Patriots or than the New York Giants. And then I get to the Giants, who are currently slotted to pick 4th overall. I can't find a positive look at the end of their season. I can't. Tommy DeVito starting the rest of your freaking season, you might lose every game by 20, 30. I don't.
Their D is good, though. Giants D
is
at least serviceable. Dexter Lawrence is makes the big
I don't know if it's enough, dude. Tommy DeVito, undrafted. I don't know if Tommy DeVito has enough for the Giants to be favored in any game they play again this year. I mean, looking at their rest of schedule, there is not games where I'm like, yep, I'm betting Tommy DeVito as a favorite. I literally won't do it. And
Patriots, Commanders, Patriots, Packers, Rams are all winnable games for them. Cowboys, Saints, Eagles don't. But
they have to.
It is week 18 Eagles though.
Yeah, they have to go. So they go to Dallas this week, loss. They go to Washington. That one, I think the spread's going to be close. Maybe if DeVito pulls that out, stunned. Yeah. Then they host the Patriots. Bill Belichick's going to have Tommy DeVito in a vice grip, dude. I don't know if he has more than 5 yards passing. It's going to be a vice grip. And then you go to the Packers game on December 11th, which will be coming. They'll be coming out of a bye. That'll be a winnable game. Coming out of a bye, taking on the Packers at home. The Packers are the youngest team in the NFL. There's reasons that you can say Giants could be even favored in that game. Mm-hmm. Then you go to New Orleans to take on the Saints in the Dome. I'm calling that an L, even with as bad as inconsistency the Saints have been. That's an L. Then they go to Philadelphia, L. They host the Rams on Christmas Eve or on New Year's Eve. I don't think they're favored. If Stafford's healthy, I think that's an L. And then they host the Eagles in Week 18. The only game I'm honestly I maybe would bet them to win is the Packers game after the bye. At that point, this is a team that could only have 3 wins.
True.
That could be the number one or number 2 overall pick, right? Maybe they don't get Caleb Williams, but they get Drake May. I don't know. I think that's maybe cope. If you're a Giants fan right now, that might be just coping with what is objectively a lost season. What would be worse is if DeVito guts out 2 or 3 wins and they don't get Drake May, Caleb Williams, or Marvin Harrison Jr. And they end up fumbling and picking the QB3 or QB4 in this class, and he is not what they thought he was going to be. And Daniel Jones, it's going to be rough. I don't know. I'm scared of that outcome, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right, my last one, number 1. I had the Cleveland Browns. It's because
wow, yeah.
1, you still don't want to root for Deshaun Watson, right? Like you're still stuck rooting for a guy that you have no interest in rooting for. Like you still want him to be good because you want the Browns to do well, but you don't want him to be good, right? You don't want to root for him and be like, yay, I can't believe Deshaun went for 300. Great. You don't feel good about it.
You don't. It's a great call. It's a great call.
So you have that aspect of it. And then after this, he's making $60 million a year. He's and he's not playing well. And you're an app. So you have a quarterback, horrible, not playing one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, making top dollar in the league for the next 3 years. And you're just stuck with it. You're just stuck with it with no cap space, with a team that's only going to get worse every single year. And yeah, you're going to win more games than anyone we've probably talked about yet on this because you're a good roster, but you're not good enough, right? You go into every season, you'll go into the next, I believe it's the next 3 seasons they're stuck with him, just knowing you're not going to be good enough. Or is it the next 2 seasons they're stuck with him, knowing that you're just not going to be good enough to win it all?
Yeah. I think that
it's the next 3. They're stuck with him through 2026. Oh, God.
Only 3 quarterbacks this year rank lower in EPA per dropback, or an advanced stat for dropback efficiency, and that's Bryce Young, Daniel Jones, and Zach Wilson. Like, to me, there isn't a team in the NFL with a more isolated outcome that has to change for them to be successful, and that's literally Deshaun Watson playing better. You could say well, what if we add this? It's brother. He's making $63 million guaranteed, and you can get out of it for the next 3 years, guaranteed. $63 million, 2024, 2025, and 2026. The only way this team is competing with the Ravens, the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills is Deshaun Watson has to be better. And right now, the sad part is better would be top half of the league, right? I think in order for them to actually be competitive with those top 4 teams I mentioned, he has to be a top 6 quarterback. He has to go back to where he was ranking in Houston. And if that all signs right now point to that, that's not coming back. I don't know. It would be absolutely shocking for Deshaun Watson to be a quarterback we're talking about in 2024 as someone who's top 5, top 8 even. He's
so far off. He's just so far off.
At the position. Yeah, I just don't think it's there. I don't know if it's coming back. Maybe he gets healthy. I know there's been injury stuff with him this year. Maybe. But building a roster around him is only going to get harder. They had 2 major injuries at tackle now, Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin, and Nick Chubb, obviously the starting running back, hurt. The margin for error when you're paying that much money to a quarterback is so thin. The only thing you can control is he's got to be healthy and he's got to play well. Both haven't rung true. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a tough team to root for right now. The one silver lining is when Jim Schwartz and that defense is out there, it's one of the funnest sides of the ball to watch. They have they're putting it together on that side of the ball, and it is electrifying to see what he's done and the speed of that defense. I think it's as fun to watch as the Jets defense right now in terms of this is a unit that can put grips on anybody.
You can at least compartmentalize. You can be I'm a Cleveland Browns defense fan. I'm a fan of the defense. If they just win games,
and I'm a Dolphins
7-0. Yeah,
I root for the Dolphins offense, and I root for the Browns defense. I have split jerseys and everything.
I feel the next shoe to drop is they probably fire Stefanski, right? If Deshaun keeps playing like this, he's going to be I want a new head coach. That's the problem.
There's been some soft reporting about who has the pants in that organization right now and who's actually able to make a lot of these decisions. And I wonder if even I wonder if Stefanski is even frustrated by the situation. Now, I'm not saying I don't know if I'm not projecting a mutually parting ways thing, but I don't know. If you're Stefanski, is this a situation you want to attach yourself to for the next X amount of years? Now, I know there's only 32 head coaching positions in the NFL, and stepping away from one sounds crazy, but I don't know, man. If I was Stefanski and some of these things that are being softly reported about who has more ownership or more sway in the locker room and who has more sway in terms of the long-term decision-making of the team, and if it's not Stefanski and it's some other people, maybe there are conversations to be hey, I'll take a step back down the ladder if it gives me a better opportunity with a team where I can actually have full grip on the situation and I'm not tied to someone who's very, very difficult to root for very reasons. Anyway.
I think that's your first curse of the podcast. I think that's at least
okay. That's it. That's it. That's it. You said darn. When you said darn today, I was oh man, I got to get on my toes.
My Deion Sanders darn. All right, brother. Well, it's fun breaking that down. Appreciate you coming back on. We'll see you again next week, Ray.
See you, man.
Always fun having a G on the show as we do every Thursday. But tomorrow's show, we have an even more elite mind in the space in Dane Brugler of The Athletic, NFL draft analyst, comes on to talk top 5 cornerbacks in the upcoming draft class. It's a very deep class. We had a very similar top 5, though. Also gets to talk about, pick his brain on some of the quarterbacks. Also picked his brain on the Senior Bowl, now adding junior. So a lot of good conversation there. Make sure to check that one out on Friday. We'll be back then. Till then, take it easy.